So, welcome. This is my level overview of the blockout I made for the final assignment. So here is the start shot of our level. The player would fade into black, and there'll be some rubble falling and some sounds of sort of rocks and metal falling, and the player starts into this office area where their spaceship has crashed in and there's some dust in the air, a little bit of thickness, like we just broke into this building. And this is the office space of the factory. It's not really been set dressed much, but you can imagine that shit's just flown around. So yeah, the player doesn't really have anywhere else to go but this obvious door with a strong light. So the player goes through and they see a gun here which they can approach and pick up. So this is their alien gun, as we are an alien on Earth, and we're in this factory. We're still in the office area. This is with the elevators. Here the player can now gets a prompt to sort of press right click to take energy source. And there would also be a VFX going into it showing that the gun wants energy. So the player can right click onto it, and additionally they can also shoot into this other energy source and vice versa. So this is a little testing area just to get a feel for the mechanic. What would happen is that these elevator doors open and close if the energy source has energy. And the intent would be that this has like sort of hissing, sparkling sound effects, sort of visual electricity going through this random thing. It's a little bit cartoonish, but that's the intent. It's this kind of an ironic game. So here you can see it's more broken stuff. You can see out clouds, but also this here would be a piece of building or a spaceship, probably building falling through. This will be the fragile objects that are in the game, which are probably intentionally supposed to be look like sort of cracked, broken shader object with a little bit of glow on the broken parts, with like a cracking sound. And if the player shoots them while they have energy in their gun, it breaks. Pretty simple. And so yeah, that's where the player learns here, is that they can take energy and break stuff. So yeah, here we get the first vista of the game. The player sees their goal, which is their cargo, which is stuck in this lighthouse with all the smoke and intentionally some fire too. Yeah, the player sees out, they can see out the sunset out into the mountains in an unspecified location in the northern hemisphere. So yeah, there will probably also be some trials, a little bit more smoke fading away in the sky. If the player decides to go right, you can get a little bit of foreshadowing into our nice cold dark factory. So yeah, this is the more warm colored area, still a bit yellow, like not super warm with the sunset coming in. You can see out again. But if we continue onward, we can put our energy into this door here with the glass, and reveals us out into the very coldly lit, more open space, more functionally built, factory area. So the player's goal is obviously to continue forward, to get out of here. And to do so, they would maybe assume that they would have to jump over here, because this is sort of intentionally the only way you can continue forward if they explore. And what they realize is they can't really go through there. So maybe they can look through here, realize there's something over there, and they probably they want to go over there. So walking around the area, intentionally try to nudge the player that they can jump over here. And then they can take from this energy source. And what happens is you see these green objects in the background moving. This is heavy machinery in the factory, all part of the sort of flow of intentionally how I wanted the factory to work. But yeah, so the player takes the energy and traverses, and that's the whole point of the energy in the gun. Also would like to note that all the fallen apart stuff you see, like the fence is broken and stuff, my intent would be to set dress it as if there has been some renovation going on. But yeah, so the player continues on solving this puzzle, taking the energy from here to here. That's the only way they can continue forward. This also sets up our path for backtracking, so the player gets the idea that there is a effect of their actions later on, which could be pretty cool if they realize that, when they're leaving, and even though in the middle of a huge shootout. So yeah, here's the sort of final puzzle of the factory where we combine both the mechanics. The player breaks this and is able to jump. So the puzzle is still meant to be simple in this area. It's more of an introduction, so they get used to everything. But yeah, this is cold open area. That door there is supposed to be closed. You can't really tell, it's in the dark anyways, but it's supposed to be closed, and later on it will open up. So yeah, we go out of this the end of the pipeline of work here, and we're at the sort of truck loading bay, and we fall out, because I do that every time. And we have this big mountain over here in the view, and if we look left now when the player walks out, if they decide to look over here, they see that the cargo in the ship falls out, and they get some funny subtitles. The alien's like, oh man, oh no. Here I forgot to mention that if the player doesn't look at the lighthouse and just continues walking, they still hear a loud sort of collapsing noise of this metal falling off of the lighthouse and rocks and stuff breaking. and they can, but instead obviously they have to continue onward, and there's like a attracting light and a pathway through here. Here it's sort of blocked off. The intent is that, well, the player's not supposed to go that direction. So yeah, the player continues towards this light and this big mountain overlooming. Yeah, if they continue just following the lights, and that's sort of the obvious way to go. Now you can actually see that the cargo is not in the ship anymore. If the player looks, there will still be some fire, but the big smoke is sort of gone. And yeah, so the player goes to this construction area. All the elements up until here have all supposed to have been construction elements, like pipes and in bundles and stuff laying around. If the player wants to continue, they want to be able to jump over here, and they're not able to. So we go and we can take this energy over here for the lift and put it into the loader kind of thing that moves stuff around. Or it's a forklift, it's whatever. And the player is able to traverse. And so yeah, this area, all the areas previously, everything that's been placed out are covers, which you'll be able to see when I backtrack, if there's time for it. So yeah, the player continues on here. And now when they're leaving this building over here, they start to hear sirens and choppers approach. The intent is that I don't want to do it before the puzzle to stress out the player, but rather we get it afterwards. So the player has this calm before the storm, or quiet before the storm. Yeah, so we approach, we see the cargo's falling down, and when we approach, this is not really open, but there's an animation, and the alien opens it up and goes, "Oh, thank you." And they have this new mechanic in their gun, which is simply that they can shoot like bullets and destroy stuff, but when they're in that mode, they cannot power stuff, and that is decided by interacting with the environment factor, not just a button press. But yeah, so when they do this, after the animation, they hear behind them some, very European-sounding language. I'm not going to specify anything. Someone's screaming at them in the back, like, "What the hell? Is that an alien?" Well, that's at least what the character's thinking. And now we're getting attacked by a wave of police officers. So yeah, I've just placed out examples of red capsules of where enemies could be on the way back. And you can see sort of highlighting all the covers and the backtracking I intended. So yeah, you can see here, we continue. This is sort of like just a work in progress that someone's building. See all the points we've previously been at. This is now an arena setup. The puzzle we did, there are enemies at different layers. The player can take advantage of that, standing at different points to shoot. Obviously, I haven't set up a correct range, but imagine the player can shoot from there. Same thing here. We can shoot people, continue going, and I'm not going to shoot anymore. You get the point. But the player can continue walking, and when they're here, they see two military or helicopters flying and landing behind the building, because that's where the parking lot would actually be, and that's so realistically how a factory parking lot would be. And now you see here, cop cars are here, cops ready to shoot the player, and we come back to going into the factory, and from this approach, you see that there's a different path the player can take. So if the player decides to go through the normal path, they will have a disadvantage coming from sort of an open, big entrance into trying to fight enemies. But instead, if they take this path up here, this is sort of like, some electrical stuff. I'm going to pretend like I didn't just fall. So it has some fuses and stuff, like electrical stuff, like pretty normal in factories when they need a lot of power. So yeah, instead the player comes from this high ground advantage and shoots, and we can kill our way through. Yeah, here again, I forgot to mention that there's a staircase that if the player approaches from below, they come up from a winding staircase, simply. And we continue backtracking through the areas we've been. So this is a large room. This is where we had the final puzzle. We continue forward. Player now can finally break some stuff. I should have maybe placed some earlier as well, but whatever. So here we continue. Now you can see this is the effect of the previous puzzle. We can continue onward through the room where we had this puzzle. We can see directly everything. There are enemies laid out. You can see where I was intending for them all to be throughout. And yeah, the player comes back in the same room, and we backtrack through the last hallway, and there's still enemies placed out, and we fight our way back, basically, pretty simply. And now we're at here, and we fly away, and have a happy day. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to show quickly that I attempted to try to make a flow of the whole factory. So yeah, to start off, you can see there's like a loading bay area with big silos where they would keep these. This is where like boats would bring these sort of minerals for the factory. And yeah, so these would then be moved through the pipes you see in the walls, and also the carts. You can see that we were using the puzzles or intentionally moving them in and up through this area alongside the piping. It's kind of like a little bit unspecified and slightly abstract of like what exactly it is, but I try to keep it sort of, it isn't anything specific. Yeah, so here there's like the refinery area with the chimney where the stuff gets processed and this big machine and a control panel to the left. Then underneath there is this sort of further processing and then packaging. It's obviously just kept hidden, but it's like flow charted in a sense, so that this is where stuff will get packaged, taken into this big stamping machine, and then with forklifts it's taken into the truck and to another unspecified location in the northern hemisphere.